Going once, going twice, sold! You're listening to The Property Pod, an accessible and easy way to get into or help understand the goings-on of the property market. Join Aaron, John and Pat as they discuss all things real estate, most likely get sidetracked, and then try and rein it all back in as they present The Property Pod.
All right, welcome back to the Property Pod. Thanks for joining us for another week. It's been a good week in real estate and in the lives of the boys. How are we, team?
I am feeling fantastic.
You're looking sharp. You're not in a fur coat, but you do look sharp.
Well, try my hardest. I'm not to John standards because he's in that tweed jacket like always, and man, he looks smicko.
He actually is the best looking of the group, isn't he?
Yeah. That's why we're doing a radio show these days and no longer doing our video shows.
I'll take it.
John, I've had some cracking feedback from your episode last week.
Really?
I've had people reach out from all around the world.
Yes.
Had another friend of ours. We keep bringing up friends, but
Yeah.
friends are listening.
Yeah.
He loved what you had put in and all the research you did. He said, I can't wait to see, he said, I'm enjoying the rise of John McGregor, but I can't wait to see the fall that you guys are talking about.
Well, mind you, if did you guys ever watch that Pumping Iron with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it? So one of my favourite scenes in that show is there's him and a bunch of dudes just, laying out, getting a tan on. And this one guy saying to Arnie, because he's returning for the number 6 Mr. Universe.
Yep.
And the guy's like, oh, look, he's talking about Arnie's been at the top of his game. And he says, oh, look, well, obviously you got the young wolf. And I think there's only those that are underneath, they're hungrier. And there's only one way to go when you're at the top, Arnie. And he says, or I could just stay at the top.
So that's you, John. So you're just staying at the top. Well, talking about pumping iron, you said you're hitting the gym. Is that still happening each day?
Went this morning.
Oh, look at this. This is a different John. I'm not.
I know, that's why we need to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
I do admit, last week I was probably not as chatty as what I have been in previous episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
John was on point, and I listened back to it over the weekend, and I have to say it was a really good episode.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's some good banter there, some good laughing, and I was quiet, so it was different not listening to my own voice for a change.
It's actually good. So we ran out of time. John was on top of his game and he brought heaps of stuff to us. So we actually are going to do a follow-up today.
Yeah, so towards the end of the last week's episode, John, you spoke about a few different types of agents.
Yeah, so in Australia, people only think of a seller's agent, but globally, it's more common that you've actually got both buyers and seller's agents. So you have someone representing you in your purchase. And then there's other types too, relocation agents whose whole job is to source, you're living in France and you need to move to Australia. Their whole job is to make that connection happen.
I've seen a few of those TV shows where they do the sea changeover on Foxtel and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there was someone that reached out to you, Pat.
It's quite amazingly and perfect timing. So what's been really good about this show is that in addition to so many friends obviously getting in touch with us, we've actually got real life people that are benefiting from the show. And somebody that actually reached out this week was a guy by the name of Simon. He's a researcher for a company that specialises in, finding properties for people. More from a buyer's agent perspective. And we're actually lucky enough to have him on the show today as a guest hookup via the phone. So it's just going to be a good little chat about everything property. So
it's like a sequel. I was talking about spin-offs and sequels. So
Here we go.
Well, you're talking about that thread of yarn in last week's episode,
That's
John.
it.
And here we are doing an episode 2, basically. So
Yeah, cool.
what do you reckon? Do we cut to a break and go get Simon?
You know it. Let's do it.
All right.
We'll be right back.
414 Real Estate has been operating within the northern suburbs of Hobart since 2006. With their innovative approach to marketing and managing your property, they have all your property needs covered. Find out more by visiting them today at 414.com.au.
Alrighty, guys, we're back in now, and thanks for being here with us. We've got a special guest today. I'm pretty excited about this one. I've been a guy from Propertyology. His name's Simon Priestley, and he's with us on the phone today. G'day, Simon.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having us on.
Not a problem, mate. Thanks for reaching out to us and being available for us this morning.
You've got a great podcast, and I must admit I'm jealous. I think Tasmania is a special part of not just Australia, but a part of the world. And for you guys to live there, I'm very jealous.
We definitely like it, but we're starting to worry too many people are finding out about it because our market's been pretty crazy the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. My 50th year on the planet, and I'd never been to Tasmania until 2013. But I think since then, myself and my family, we've probably been back, might be 8-9 times, and not just to Hobart, all parts of your beautiful state.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of Tassie. People start in Hobart and then they jump in a car and they seem to find all these other little bits and pieces around the state which are really fantastic as well.
Yeah, hidden gems everywhere.
Well, that certainly happened in my family. They started all in Western Australia and New South Wales, and everyone immigrated to Tassie bar one.
Oh, there
So,
you go.
yep.
Well, mate, you said you're 50 years on this big rock. Can you tell us a bit about yourself other than the age you've got there?
Yeah, look, I've got a commercial finance background, so sort of straight from high school into a banking career. And after 10 years of learning the ropes there, established my own business. So that's probably going on 22 years ago. But originally the business was established on that, offering a finance broking to the general public. Always loved helping people. But as the business has evolved, sort of recognised that what the consumers always missed was someone helping them making the asset decision. My role was always to help them make good lending decisions and get the finance structures right. But I've always been an avid property person myself, and there really, wasn't anything out there to help someone make really good asset decisions. And so that's how Propertyology started out. What we do, I guess to use an analogy, think of what a share investor might do. They'd go to a stockbroker who studies economics and things that affect the values of companies on the stock exchange, and they help a share investor acquire the right stocks. Well, what Propertyology does is we study economics as well from a property perspective. And so the everyday Aussie who's looking to invest in Australian real estate, they'll reach out to our company. We'll provide them professional guidance into which part of the country we feel that they should consider investing. And then our buyers agents help them find the right asset in that chosen location. And Tasmania's we've been very active in since 2014.
This might sound like a silly question coming from a property podcast, but I'm the guy who is the outsider who needs to learn everything. Could you just explain to me the idea of a buyer's agent? I was discussing this with someone the other day and I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah. That's a great question, and I think a lot of Australians wouldn't know how to answer that. A buyer's agent, I guess it's the reverse of sales agent. Property people, whether you're selling or buying, and we hear that term real estate agent, we just assume, and I'd never heard of a buyer's agent myself until probably 15 years ago. We just think, they're those great local people that are in every neighbourhood in Australia that help us do that. But the sales agent is actually the one who's engaged by the owner of a property to market and sell the features and benefits of that property. And part of their acting in the client's best interest, their client is the owner of the property, is to promote it and to get the highest price. The buyer's agent is similarly contracted by a buyer. So there's a contractual arrangement there. They don't have any vested interest in any particular property. They're not promoting any particular property, and their role is to help that buyer find the right property for them and are paid an agreed fee to do that. And part of their service delivery is to negotiate the lowest price. So where Propertyology is different, I guess, to the generic buyer's agent is the market research piece. So we only work with investors. We don't get involved with the family homes, for example.
Gotcha. So your dedicated client, in your instance, is someone who's looking specifically to invest in real estate. It's not, look, I'm trying to relocate my family. And also too, then you said you're not limited to any specific state either. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yep. So, our clients are literally all over, well, not just all over Australia, some are in different countries completely. So they would reach out to us for our expertise, knowing that all day, every day, we are analysing the fundamentals of locations all over Australia, which obviously includes Tasmania. And then we, go through a structured process to help find the right property in whichever market we're looking for. But we don't sell property. We don't auction properties. We don't have a list of properties for sale or anything. We're professional decision makers in the real estate space.
So you, I guess, when you're working with clients, it's more an analytical based decision when you're helping a potential buyer purchase a property. It's that's up from a number perspective.
A lot of that is numbers based, and certainly, if you're looking to buy a property for investment purposes, the biggest thing that gets in the way of making a really good decision, whether people are honest or not, is emotions. Property is a very emotive transaction, a very expensive transaction, and emotions are very important if you're looking to buy real estate to live in. I'd argue it's the most important thing, and you need to be happy where you're living. But if you're looking to invest, your emotions are irrelevant because you're not going to be living in it, and everyone else's emotions are going to be different to yours. So it's really important we keep all that in check. And it's we're very, myself especially, I'm a very pragmatic, practical person. Numbers are a big part of making a good decision, but a lot of property numbers are sort of a reflection of the past, something that happened last week or last year. The most valuable information are things that have an influence on future market trends, and that's not always in numbers.
Well, I know from as a seller's agent, the client's going to be looking at, why should I pay you a fee in order just to sell my house? How does that different when a buyer's agent's defending their services and expecting a client to pay them commission on that basis?
Yeah, I guess, both the sales agent and the buyer's agent offer, great value to their client. And if they can't convince, their client that there's value. Well, they obviously won't appoint their services. But, you know, the same way a seller could sell their own home, not many would. I certainly wouldn't, because it's a really, really valuable asset. And to do something once in your life compared to someone who's doing that all day, every day, I mean, you know, I'd be kidding myself to think that I could do that better than a trained professional. And there's similar value for someone who's engaging a buyer's agent. The biggest decision is made at front end, not when you're selling it. So to engage someone who's representing you, you know, that's going to help you work out which part of the country should I focus my search on. Imagine if you made that decision, say, 10 years ago and you lived in Darwin, you know, you bought an investment property in Darwin, well, you probably lost 30%. Imagine if you lived in Sydney 2 years ago and you thought, I want to buy an investment property, but I live here, so this is where I've got to invest. Well, standard house in Sydney's dropped $225,000 over the last 2 years. So that's a big part of the value, is getting the expertise for the initial location decision and then helping you remove all the emotion for the individual asset selection process. You had a great podcast I listened to a couple of weeks ago. A lovely young fella, I forget his name, sorry, but a local...
Blake. Yeah, I was going to bring that up, actually. Blake.
Yeah.
Blake kind of mirrored what you're saying in a way.
And what a wonderful young man that a lot of people can learn from. But one of the things that Blake said himself, and not his exact words, but you don't know what you don't know. And I remember listening, the years crept up, and I said second property around, you know, there's a lot of lessons I learned from the first one. You know, Blake won't know this. There's a lot of things he still doesn't know, but they can be really expensive things to learn. So if you're engaging a professional, they won't make the mistakes that someone who hasn't done it before, you know, could easily make.
Well, what do you think would be one of the biggest common, or just even a couple of common traps that people are not aware of that you normally have to coach them through?
Well, again, our market, the investment market, the number one thing is where you live should have absolutely nothing to do with where you invest. Yeah, absolutely nothing to do with it. You know, have a think about it. If you were, again, if you're a different asset class, if you're a share investor, just because you work for, say, Commonwealth Bank, it doesn't mean the best stock is going to be Commonwealth Bank. In fact, it might not even be financial services. So that's the number one thing, you know, is it is irrelevant where you live. It's a big country. Australia is made up of 8 capital cities, but there's also 178 non-capital cities that have a population of 10,000 or more. So you've got a lot of choices of investors, and that's, you know, to start, well, which town and city should I start my search in?
I guess a lot of people have that nerve, though, of buying a property out of the area. They get this in their head that they have to be able to check on it, you know, drive past it, make sure it's looking okay. So is that a challenge working with people to convince them that they should look further abroad?
Not a challenge to convince them. I guess the biggest challenge is whether the person themselves can actually be conscious of that in the first place. And you lose nothing by just reaching out to a professional and asking some questions and having an open mind, and then see whether you're comfortable engaging them or not. That's the key thing, is just have an open mind. If you're uncomfortable about anything in life, you know, frankly, you shouldn't go ahead. But it requires a bit of a psychological adjustment to overcome that. You know, geez, how do I buy a property that isn't where I live and all that sort of stuff? But if you can't overcome that, you give yourself zero chance of making the best decision.
And I think that's what our podcast, I guess, has tried to be from day one, is to help people understand that you do need a bit of a team, I guess, when making decisions. And it could be from an investment perspective, you need one team. From a first-time buyer perspective, you might need a different team of professionals to help you through the process. Yeah. That's what I guess we're trying to achieve by interviewing different people like yourself. But one of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier that really caught my attention is not so much looking back at the past from a sales perspective, and you specialize as well to a degree at looking at what potentially is coming into the future. So the reason obviously we're talking to you today is that you recently put out a blog that had your opinion and thoughts on what's happening moving forward for Hobart over the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, definitely. Look, no one can tell anyone, including Propertyology, when a market's going to start doing something or stop doing something, because if that was possible, the world would be full of crystal balls and billionaires. But as professionals, we've learned from Australian property market history some, you know, a whole bunch of things that are, I guess, leading indicators. You know, it's got to be close. That Hobart's growth cycle must be close to the end, because it has been such a strong run. I mean, Greater Hobart's made up of 7 city councils, and 4 of those have had in excess of 40% growth in its median house price over the last 5 years. And in fact, 2 of them, Glenorchy and Hobart City, have seen around about 55% price growth over 5 years. There isn't anywhere in Australia that has beaten that over that same 5 years. So logic would suggest that it's got to be close to the end, and no one could complain if it was now. But the things that we look at to sort of see, you know, is that upon us, suggest that there's probably a second wind. And I'll summarise a few things why we feel that way.
Yep.
Hobart's vacancy rate is not only the lowest of all capital cities right now, it's the lowest that any Australian capital city has ever been in the history of vacancy.
So
Now
just so that people understand, vacancy rate is from a rental perspective, how long a property is empty for?
Correct. But that also affects the sales side of things as well. So whilst it's a reflection of rental demand, it also has a direct impact on property prices. The other thing on the supply side of things is building approval volume. So that's a leading indicator to what the developers are working on now that lead to supply in the future. Now, in Hobart, that trend has been increasing, as you would expect, given what the market's done. But the numbers in the building approval pipeline are insufficient in regards to some things on the demand side of things. So it's all well and good for a local developer to say, I'm going to build a small block of units or a new housing estate or whatever. You can agree to do that, but it doesn't just happen overnight. There's typically a 2-year gestation period from time of approval through to time of completion. So supply is likely to remain tight for the foreseeable future. On the demand side of things, in spite of the growth that Hobart's had, it's still affordable in relative terms. It's the only capital city in Australia where you could still buy a 3-bedroom house for under $450,000 within 6 kilometres of Hobart CBD. It's the only capital city that can still do that. There's 39 other towns and cities in Australia that have a more expensive median house price than Hobart, so it's still relatively affordable in spite of its growth. The economy is doing a lot better than what most people on the mainland appreciate. The biggest leading indicator for Hobart there is the increase in job advertisements. So that's future jobs, for your city. That's 27% increase in job vacancies in Hobart over the last 12 months. The next biggest capital city, or next best performed capital city, is less than 4%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's interesting.
Yes. So the economy is really why Hobart's property market has performed well over the last 5 years. It's because your local economy has improved significantly from the old days of the recession to being one of the strongest economies in the country. But we see that continuing to be strong for quite some time.
And wherever there's strong employment is an indicator that people are relocating to Hobart or working in the area. So that's a strong sign for investors to consider the area. Is that how you see it?
Yeah. The economic stuff is the most valuable information to propertyology about any location. But yes, the economic conditions has a direct impact on housing demand. So whether it's in, the ability to attract new people to relocate to a city for those job opportunities, or more importantly, it's the local residents that are already there. When you've got strong economic conditions, you've got strong local confidence. And whether we're a first home buyer, an investor, or someone trying to upgrade or downsize our existing dwelling, it's still an expensive asset, and it often involves debt. And we need to be in a positive mindset to do that. So, that's where the direct link to economic conditions is really important. The buyer sentiment is important to that. Tasmania also is second in Australia for wage growth. It's become a national, very topical subject over the last few years. But Tasmania is second in Australia, for wage growth. So economic conditions is very, very important, and we get that continuing in your great city for as far forward as we can anticipate.
Well, if we could bring it to then imagine for a moment, Pat, Aaron and I are all looking to engage your services in that sense, but all of us we're all at different stages of our investment portfolio. I'm looking to purchase my first one. Pat's got 10 and Aaron's got 100. Do you?
Yes, I do, baby. Look out.
Let's put on those coats again, boys.
Get out your goblets, boys.
So is that advice, and, I'm not going to say push Tassie, but obviously this is where our podcast is the advice you're going to give to each of us going to be different because of our buying capacity is vastly different as well?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our philosophies are, I would imagine would be much the same as what the stockbroker would be doing for the share investor. As an investor, you've got to get the right balance. No one's got a crystal ball, but the number one role of an analyst is to anticipate future, to look for the opportunities, but you've got to get the balance right between the best opportunities and the existing investments that you might already have, and key to that is diversification. So I'd argue if you've already, no matter where you're living in Australia, if you've got a family home, wherever it is, already there's a reason to consider having an open mind to other locations, because something could happen that has an adverse impact on the property market that you live in years to come. And if you've got the family home there and that one investment property or a couple of investment properties, your whole future is at risk there. So we definitely look for location diversity. That's not different suburbs. That's completely different towns and cities, and also completely different states. They'll have different economic conditions. There's different tax considerations, land taxes. For example, a state government could be on the nose for a prolonged period of time, and that can have an adverse impact on property markets right across that state. Tassie's been through that in the past. New South Wales has been through it in the past. Queensland's going through that right now. So that can happen anywhere at any time.
Speaking of crystal balls in Queensland, did you predict the Brisbane Lions win on the weekend, Simon?
What a great question. Now you're talking passion.
I did a little bit of research and I saw you're an avid Lions man, so I wanted to bring it in there somehow.
You call it research, I call it stalking.
No, I'm as passionate as they come for AFL and particularly the Brisbane Lions. And I'd like to think I kept the emotions in check, although it's bloody hard to do when it comes to AFL footy. I did actually pick us. I wouldn't have done that a month ago. I would have just been looking to see a competitive effort, but there's a steely resolve about the Brisbane Lions at the moment. They are literally focusing on improving and a game at a time, and they've got no limits as to what they can achieve.
Good Tasmanian coach up there as well. I think that might be a helpful factor.
Yeah, Chris Fagan is a Launceston boy, I believe, isn't he?
He is. He
was an old teacher at our school.
He actually taught at our school, and we're connected to the Brisbane Lions that way.
So you'd be able to relate to I guess his strength in relationship building that his players always talk about.
That's it. He's a good bloke.
Well, let's segue with strength of relationship. Have you got an average client time you've been working with them? Is it 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? Do you find they leave your services for a time and then come back, Simon, or does their property holdings change depending upon the cycle in a particular market?
It's important to us to, once we earn a client's trust and confidence, is to maintain that for their entire, working life. Property being expensive, though, it's not something that people transact in every day. But certainly, each and every time a client can afford to buy a property again, that's part of our offering, is that the locations that we're going to be investing in, they're always going to change from year to year, that they'll come back and reconnect, knowing that we'll always sort of have the finger on the pulse and look to get them into the next market. But our clients can be someone, the first-time property buyer in their mid-20s, it's rare but, refreshing when someone so young is so motivated and wanting to do that. But they can also be someone who might have already bought several properties before and have learnt the value in engaging expertise.
I got one, Simon. So coming back to, obviously, you've built rapport and you've got a client that's looking to buy their next home. I guess bringing it back to this Hobart marketplace, which is where we are, and with this new report you've brought out, is there a particular suburb that you would recommend over another, for instance, if you were looking to buy in the Hobart marketplace at the moment?
First thing I'd say for that is bringing it back to earlier. Hobart, I think it's still got a good future, but it has had a strong run. So whether you live in Hobart or anywhere else, if you're looking to invest today, I'd suggest there's good reasons to look beyond Tassie. But that said, parts of the Glenorchy and Clarence and Kingborough city councils, that's where we focused our attention on. We were buying in Hobart in 2014 to 2016, and it was within those sort of three municipalities. But to us, they offer the combination of they're still affordable, not as expensive as Hobart City, but if you get too far out, we've actually got some concerns with the City Council of Brighton in future years. There's just not enough jobs out there, and I don't think there's ever going to be, or as far forward as we anticipate. So there's also, we see a lot of supply that's going to hit that segment of the market. So the better locations, and the strategy I guess we follow right around Australia, is finding the sweet spot between locations that offer affordability, not going to get smashed with either high-rise or land releases in future years, and are in close proximity to key employment nodes. So that's why we sort of focused on those three locations.
Yeah, cool.
I'm guessing then there's some core fundamentals that you're looking and you've got your finger on right across Australia. And I suppose, and that's the benefit of engaging a service like yours, is that use that analogy of the stock market before where, often, I suppose, was it like 70 or 80% of investors are, say, your mum and dad, they'll own one property, but they're going to buy it within 5 kilometres of their own home, rather than it's almost like, you wouldn't invest in the business right next to your house either, as a general rule. So it's really about they can find you and you can put them in touch with those markets right across Australia in order to, like you said, diversify that portfolio to mitigate any potential risks in your financial future down the track.
Yeah, and it starts with, we see every town and city in Australia, we give what we call an economic profile. So to us, that we've identified the 2 or 3 main industries that are important to that city's economy, and then we need to be confident that the outlook for economic conditions in a chosen town or city is for an improving trend, and that improvement in economic conditions is what lifts the property market. You know, if you go back, think of your home city and the economic conditions for several years leading up to 2014. They weren't particularly good and been that way for a long period of time. But as the economy improved, that's when buyer confidence improved. That's when jobs, started to pick up. That's when you would have had more people bidding at your open homes. That's when those with money are looking to, I'm not talking about mum and dad investors, but the private sector investors, those who build hotels, that promote tourism opportunities and infrastructure projects, but it all starts with that initial economic outlook.
So the biggest question then, Simon, is when are you moving and your family down to Tasmania?
That's not as silly as it sounds. We've debated that a lot, and then it's the question of, if we did, is it Launceston or Hobart? Because we've had several trips to both and see the beauty in both. I also think Burnie is probably arguably Australia's most underrated real estate. It's a small city, but it's a great city and a beautiful part of the world as well. So look, we've got a 12-year-old son, and so I guess the only thing that sort of stopped us relocating to your great state is not wanting to destabilise him at that fragile stage of his life.
All right, we'll get him involved in a good footy team, mate. It's fine.
We'll get Chris Fagan back down here for the Tassie AFL side, and you can move down and support the Tassie Devils or whatever we call it.
Doesn't take much to sell that story to me, I tell you.
All right, mate. Well, we might wrap it up there. We thank you so much for your time. I guess the key takeaway from that I got was look outside your broader area and think big with where you might be able to invest, and look into Propertyology to help you out with that if you're interested.
I guess for me, the biggest key takeaway I took is talk to, people that understand the market and understand what you're trying to achieve. So just don't try to do it alone. Seek out professionals to help you out with all your different needs.
Yeah, and the other one I saw too is a guy had asked me today what I thought of the market. But like I said, I said my opinion always gets referred to people much smarter than me. And in this case, same goes for right about now.
Well, we thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat to us today, Simon. It's been a pleasure talking to you about the Hobart market and a buyer's agent role in general. Really appreciate your time.
I've enjoyed the opportunity, guys, and congratulations to all of you on a great podcast. Was that story in the Mercury that I read? That's what drew my attention to it, and I think I've listened to every episode. And you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully we can get you back on again one day in the future.
I'd love to, anytime.
Sounds good, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers.
As a family-run business, First National Real Estate McGregor understands that the property market can be stressful. However, with a strong team in both sales and rentals, we are here to guide you through the property maze. Find out more today at mcgregorfm.com.
Chatting with Simon. He was a good bloke.
Shame about his footy team, but we're not all perfect, I guess.
Hey, mate, like I said, he's Chris Fagan. He's a Tassie boy, and we know him, so let's claim it.
Eh? Yeah.
Oh, isn't it such a small world? It's not that he knows Chris personally, but we do.
But it was really cool getting that perspective from his side of the industry, because I guess he was a buyer's agent specific for investors.
Yeah, I was over in Melbourne just recently chatting with some friends, and they're mentioning buyer's agent. And I'm just like, that's what I asked him about.
Yeah,
I've got no idea what that is, and I was like, I'm on a property podcast. I should know what that is. But I'm kind of glad that when he said, oh, no, that's a good question, everybody knows it. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Or everyone doesn't know it.
He was being polite.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciated his politeness. He was nice to me, and I liked that.
No, it was really good having him on the show. I think he gave a good insight, not only to what a buyer's agent does, but a little bit more info about the Hobart market as well, which is great.
Yeah. No, it was good. So just for Simon's purposes, if you want to find him online, he's on Twitter at Simon Pressley, Presssley. You can find them at propertyology.com.au.
And I highly recommend, if you are getting into investing, that probably sign up to his newsletter, because I've just recently done it, and the content that they create is fantastic. It's really knowledgeable.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, sweet. Well, yeah, as we always say, like, share and subscribe. Get us out there so that it's not just our family and friends listening, but people like Simon and other people in the industry who obviously are listening out there. We have, as you said, the Mercury. Well, we shouldn't bring it up, but we keep doing it.
Hey, Simon brought it up this time.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, well, that's it. And look, we are open to anybody that wants to have a chat with us on the show as well. So reach out to us.
Yeah.
We can build a show around what your knowledge is and what your expertise are. And it's really just fun having people on the show.
I was listening to a podcast the other day of three friends similar to us who all they discuss is the Mighty Ducks.
Dead set.
So do you reckon we could get them on the show and we'd probably have nothing to do with property, but geez, it'd be fun.
I'm so impressed that they could make a podcast around the Mighty Ducks.
You should see how many episodes there are. They're probably up to episode 200 or something like that. And
Oh,
they just
that's
analyse the smallest little things and just talk rubbish like us. But I'll link it in the show notes, guys.
Hey, man, you gotta have a passion.
You really like that extra bonus, nothing to do with real estate show note feature.
That's my area of expertise. The nothing to do with real estate.
Every week we get a little bonus.
A little bonus.
Aaron's bonus. Well, I think another bonus is John brought up Arnie before.
Oh,
And
yeah,
As we were interviewing, I got sidetracked and I was like, I think there's a photo of John. You met Arnie, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I did.
I would like to put that on our socials.
All right, done. I'll dig it out. And if we can find that clip from Pumping Iron, yeah, let's
Show
post that
notes.
there as well, yeah.
right.
Stay at the top, people. Stay at the top.
All right,
That's
guys.
giving us the wrap up.
I am, because we are starting to tick over a little bit. It's been fun, guys, but we need to close this up.
All right.
boys,
Thanks
catch you
again for
guys.
listening.
All right, see you guys.
See ya. And now for a legal disclaimer. You have been listening to The Property Pod, produced and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Real Estate and McGregor First National Propriety Limited.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek then use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services. No investment decision or activity should be undertaken on the basis of this information without first seeking qualified and professional advice.